on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Well, on ouvre les portes, let the doors be opened. Order. Alors. Statements by members. Déclaration de député. L'honorable député.
The honourable member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, territory belongs to the people who live on it. And when it comes to developing the territory, it's up to the representatives voted by the public to bring in legislation corresponding to its priorities. That is the very basis of democracy. And this basis is attacked when Ottawa decides to completely disregard the wishes of the population. And that's why we stand with the people of British Columbia when the government is trying to push Trans Mountain down their throats. We remember what could have happened with Energy East. This bully boy federalism concerns us all, and this is why I tabled Bill C-392, which would oblige Ottawa to honour provincial legislation and municipal regulations. It's high time that the government learned the most rudimentary respect for democracy and the right of the public to choose. That is also in national interest.
Popcorn, Mr. Speaker, because today is National Canadian Film Day. Across the country, people will be gathering at over 800 screenings, taking in the incredible work of Canadian creators. De Tofino à Toronto.
From Tofino to Toronto, from Whitehorse to Westmount, we're watching Canadian films. And this year's theme is the celebration of women in Canada and in cinema.
Film Day has expanded the audience for Canadian productions for 5 years now. This year includes terrific films like Maudie by producer Mary Young Leckie from my riding of Parkdale High Park, The Breadwinner, and I've Heard the Mermaid Singing, which I'll be watching tonight with my constituents at The Review, our wonderful community cinema in Roncesvalles. There are 7 screenings in my riding alone, Mr. Speaker. Mais peu importe où vous vivez,
no matter where you live, I would encourage everyone to go see a film in a cinema or in a library to celebrate our cinema and to learn more about Canada's history through the magic of a film. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For Brant.
Mr. Speaker, Brantford's Krista Duchesne, at age 41, finished 3rd at the Boston Marathon. Running in memory of the Humboldt victims and training in our Canadian winters prepped her for a day where she would beat all but 2 of the best field ever assembled in the history of the race and deliver the best result by a Canadian since 1980. I don't know where to start with this remarkable, strong woman of faith. She didn't start running seriously until her mid-20s with an aspiration to make it to the Olympics. She juggled work, training, and raising 3 beautiful children. She didn't get to the 2012 Olympics and aimed for Rio instead. But that came crashing to a halt in 2014 when she suffered a broken hip at the end of a race. Armed with a plate and 3 screws in her hip, she refocused to get to Rio, and almost a year to the day after breaking her hip, she qualified for Rio at the Rotterdam Marathon with a 3rd-place finish. She's a spectacular person and an inspiration to all moms, athletes, and Canadians. Congratulations, Krista.
Honourable member for Burnaby North, Seymour.
Mr. Speaker, on April 2nd, hundreds of friends, family, and colleagues gathered in New Westminster to celebrate the life of Samuel Bellsberg. Sam was an extraordinary Canadian who lived a remarkable life of service and dedication to his family and to his country. Sam was a visionary leader, and his drive saw him rise to be one of Canada's most successful businessmen. Yet, Sam still had more to do. In 2003, Sam, along with Jack Blaney and later David Eisenstadt, launched Action Canada, a fellowship program which would identify emerging leaders, bring them together, and send them on a once-in-a-lifetime journey to better understand Canada and how to contribute to it. Sam believed, along with his wife Fran, that such a fellowship network could have a transformative impact on Canada, and he was right. 15 years later, Sam's Action Canada Fellowship Network is over 200 strong, And the leaders that Sam helped select, train, and mentor are a living monument to his generosity, his vision, and unrivaled commitment to Canada. Thank you, Sam. We'll miss you.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week in my riding of Edmonton Strathcona, I had the pleasure of hosting a group of extraordinary young Canadians participating in a nationwide dialogue for action on the United Nations 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. This three-year initiative, Youth for Gender Equality, is partnered with Plan Canada, the Canadian Teachers Federation, World Vision Canada, White Ribbon, and provincial councils for international cooperation, including the Alberta Council for Global Cooperation. The initiative offers a grassroots plan of action for Canadian action on the Sustainable Development Goals. At my session, the youth identified a broad range of gender inequality issues they face, including discrimination, wage gaps, and sexual harassment. Not stopping there, they identified actions and strategies for government and community alike to address the very challenges they face in seeking equality. The results of these dialogues will be shared at the 2018 Y7 Summit occurring in parallel with the G7 in Quebec City and will help inform Canada's SDG implementation. Here's hoping this government heeds their calls for action.
Honourable Member for Nepean.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today with a sad and heavy heart to speak on the hate crimes committed in Ottawa in the recent past. First, the Jamni Umar Mosque in my riding was vandalized with posters bearing white supremacist messages. Second, at Hilda Javardhana Maya Buddhist temple, a statue of Buddha, who symbolizes peace, was viciously decapitated. Third, a young Sikh man was physically assaulted, was subject to racial slurs and hateful comments about his ethnicity, and worse, his turban ripped off. These hateful acts have no place in Canadian society. I know these heinous acts do not reflect the Canadian values of openness and inclusiveness. Our Canadian society is truly multicultural and inclusive. I wish to assure our Muslim brothers and sisters, our Buddhist brothers and sisters, and our Sikh brothers and sisters that all of us here stand in solidarity with you all. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Wellington Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, amid all the doom and gloom in the newspaper industry, there's some good news. And that good news is in Wellington County in rural Ontario. 50 years ago, Bill and Trudy Adsett started a newspaper out of the front seat of their car. First, they only sold classified ads, but as time went on, they began to cover the news. Today, the paper, managed by their son, Dave Adsett, is one of the largest family-owned independent weekly newspapers in Canada. It's profitable, and it is the single biggest source of news in the county. As they say at the Wellington Advertiser, we cover the county. The paper, along with Wellington County, is looking to the future. It's just digitized every edition of the paper from its first on March 12, 1968, until today. It's also just received the Ontario Community Newspapers Association Gold Quill Award. Congratulations to the Adsett family and to all the staff at the Wellington Advertiser.
The Honourable Member for New Brunswick Southwest.
Mr. Speaker, on April 23rd, I will be introducing a motion that will ensure we as parliamentarians are doing everything we possibly can for the long-term protection of Canada's endangered whale species. This includes the North Atlantic right whale, the St. Lawrence estuary beluga, and the southern resident killer whale. I want to thank the Ministers of Fisheries and Transport for the extensive measures introduced to protect the North Atlantic right whale and our oceans. These whales are an integral part of our environment, our culture, and our economy. I know that people across the country understand the importance of protecting these species. In New Brunswick Southwest, Joseph Hollett, a brave constituent of mine, tragically lost his life trying to save an endangered right whale. Further study by the Standing Committee for Fisheries and Oceans will help inform longer-term measures to protect and recover these species. I will be looking for your support on Motion 154. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Surrey Newton.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Mr. Speaker, every year in the heart of Surrey Newton, the annual Baisakhi and Khalsa Day parade attracts nearly 500,000 Canadians celebrating the birth of Khalsa. Outside of India, it is the largest celebration in the world and is an amazing display of the diverse and multicultural character of our country. On April 21st, I invite all members of this House and their constituents to join me in celebrating this joyous occasion. And I want to send my best wishes to all Canadians celebrating Baisakhi and Khalsa Day. ਮੇਰੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਸਮੂਹ ਸਿੱਖ ਜਗਤ ਨੂੰ ਅਤੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨਸ ਨੂੰ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਜੀ ਦੇ ਸਿਰਜਣਾ ਦਿਵਸ ਤੇ ਔਰ ਵਿਸਾਖੀ ਦੇ ਪਵਿੱਤਰ ਦਿਹਾੜੇ ਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ-ਬਹੁਤ ਮੁਬਾਰਕਬਾਦ। ਹੈਪੀ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਡੇ ਐਂਡ ਹੈਪੀ ਵਿਸਾਖੀ।
The honourable member for Foothills.
A tireless work ethic, an unwavering commitment to our rural communities, and a passion for the land passed on from generation to generation. Our farmers have much to which to be proud. I'm inviting Canadians across the country to join me in celebrating the inaugural National Grain Growers Week. Through innovation, determination, and environmental stewardship, our Canadian farmers grow the highest quality grain in the world.
Amen.
To continue to be successful, our farmers must get their products to market, and they must have an efficient regulatory regime. We have much work to do, and time is of the essence. Amendments to Bill C-49 will bring much-needed accountability to our transportation system, preventing future crippling grain backlogs. The Trans-Pacific Partnership provides access to lucrative new markets, ensuring long-term stability for Canadian grain growers. We must work together in this House to pass Bill C-49 as amended and ratify the TPP before the summer recess. As Conservatives, we are committed to getting this done. In the spirit of the National Grain Growers Week, I ask everyone to join us.
Honourable member for St. Boniface, St. Vital.
Mr. Speaker, this Saturday, in my riding, we will be celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Albertson Research Centre at the Hôpital St. Boniface.
Refer to the St. Boniface Hospital Albertson Research Centre. World-class because it attracts top researchers from around the world. World-class because it makes important scientific breakthroughs, like the recent PEG-2S antibiotic, which can help against the global fight against antibiotic-resistant bacteria.
Since the beginning, this centre has been aiming at excellence. It is run by Dr. John Forster, now Dr. Grant Pierce, and this centre has been innovating on a global scale in cardiovascular research and other forms of research.
Saturday, but I will be there in spirit celebrating with them. Happy 30th anniversary to the St. Boniface Hospital Albertson Research Centre.
The Honourable Member for Longueuil-Charlemagne. Mr. Speaker, during this Volunteers Week, I'd like to pay tribute to all volunteers in my riding.
In energy, volunteers in Longueuil-Charlemagne contribute in an exceptional way to the good of our community, from serving hot lunches to senior soup at soup kitchens, to making sure every child gets a toy at Christmas. They comfort the hurt and the lonely. They fundraise for our charitable organizations.
Thanks to volunteer participation, these organizations can do their job, as is the case with La Mosaïque, la Maison des Tournesols du Repas, Le Passon, and the Greenfield Park Old-Timers Hockey Association.
Speaker, volunteers across Canada might be giving a lot, but they gain even more in return.
I would urge all Canadians to get involved and to become leaders in their communities.
Honourable member for Calgary Nose Hill.
Today, the Yazidi people celebrate their new year. Every year it falls on a particular Wednesday of April, also called Red Wednesday. While this occasion is the celebration of a new year and new life, it's also time to pay respects to those who have passed away. This year it may be difficult because there has been so much loss for the Yazidi people. Yet, the resiliency of this community is incredibly inspiring. While many Yazidis have suffered greatly in recent years, the diaspora community, such as those right here in Canada, have brought with them these rich cultural traditions and the hope born in a new year. Much of their religion and traditions are unwritten and are passed down orally, including the recipes that they cook on holidays. Yazidis around the world today will celebrate with a banquet of traditional foods, colored eggs, dancing, singing, and red flowers. To all the Yazidis in Canada and around the world, I wish you a very happy New Year. Sarey, Saleh, Pirosby.
The honourable member for South Shore St. Margaret's.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to talk about Petite Riviere, or more commonly referred to as just Petite, an elementary school in my riding of South Shore St. Margaret's, but also in my community. Just a few months ago, Petite was on the brink of closure, a decision that would have devastated its students and their families and our whole community, but we rallied around to support it. In February, the Nova Scotia Supreme Court overruled the former school board's decision to close Petite, meaning that an essential service and a driver of rural sustainability will continue to thrive. Now, just a few months later, Petite has won a national contest, a $20,000 shopping spree for new technology from Staples Canada. The school was one of only 10 winners nationally of the Superpower Your Schools contest and was chosen out of over 740 applications based on their remarkable sustainability and environmentalism. This is a school that raises chickens, Mr. Speaker. Yes, actual chickens. I'd like to congratulate the students and faculty of Petite. I look forward to seeing what they do with their technology. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Essex.
As a New Democrat, I'm used to fighting for fairness, and we will never stop fighting for women in our country to be treated equally. Women in Canada have been fighting for pay equity for decades and continue to receive only empty promises from the federal government. This is beyond disrespectful, and I, together with my NDP colleagues, will not stand for it. In 1977, the federal law dealing with equal pay for work of equal value in Section 11 of the Canadian Human Rights Act was established. Yet here we are in 2018 with statistics showing women earn 31 cents less than men on the dollar. Women have been waiting for 3 years for this government to table pay equity legislation. And in this year's budget, there is zero funding for its implementation. Progressive and feminist are words that mean something. They aren't meant to be co-opted and manipulated for political gain. Women have spent the last 40 years fighting, and we are done waiting. Enough is enough. It's time for this Liberal government to end the empty promises and get pay equity done.
The honourable member for Portage Lisgar.
Mr. Speaker, last night the world lost an incredible individual and a dear friend of Canada. Barbara Bush, former First Lady of the United States, wife of former President George Bush, and mother of 6 children, including former President George W. Bush, passed away at the age of 92. As matriarch of her distinguished family, she was a bedrock of support, advice, and love. On her most recent birthday, her husband of 72 years lovingly tweeted, "I'm still the luckiest guy in the world." An international champion of literacy, Mrs. Bush left us with words of wisdom that we can still learn from. She said, "Cherish your human connections. At the end of your life, you will never regret not having passed one more test, winning one more verdict, or not closing one more deal. You will regret time not spent with a husband, a child, a friend, or a parent." Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the official opposition, I want to convey our deepest sympathies to the Bush family and to the American people on the loss of this remarkable woman, Barbara Bush.
Honourable member for Kingston and the Islands.
Mr. Speaker, it gives me great honour to welcome students, faculty, and alumni from Queen's University to Parliament Hill. Today is Queen's Advocacy Day on the Hill, and I am excited to see the traditions and spirit of Queen's campus come alive in the nation's capital. As one of the first universities in Canada, starting with 13 students and 2 professors in 1842, it is inspiring that Queen's has grown to be one of the world's leading post-secondary institutions with more than 23,000 students and 131,000 alumni worldwide. Queen's researchers and students are turning discoveries into new technologies and companies in clean tech, health, renewable energy, and many other sectors. Queen's is continually pushing the boundaries through establishing new and innovative facilities such as Queen's Innovation Park and the soon-to-open Innovation and Wellness Centre. So whether you're a Queen's graduate, as I know many of us are, or just interested to know more about Queen's success, I encourage all members of this House to join us later this afternoon for Queen's official reception right here in Centre Block. Once again, welcome Queen's University and best wishes for success.
questions, questions orales. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, before this Prime Minister was elected, Canada was a great place to invest in the energy sector. Companies like Kinder Morgan didn't need bailouts or guarantees. They had investors and they had the commitment to get through one of the world's most rigorous environmental processes. In fact, the previous Conservative government got 4 major pipelines built, including Northern Gateway, which would have brought our energy resources to Tidewater that they killed. Now, energy investment has fallen off a cliff, and now the message to investors is clear. You need to have your project nationalized if you want it built. Isn't this what the Prime Minister wanted all along?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
The Leader of the Opposition is breaking news to all of us today. Northern Pipeline actually got built to foreign markets. Northern Gateway did not get built because the Federal Court of Appeal said that his government hadn't consulted properly with Canadians. And Mr. Speaker, the member also knows that any discussion about investment in the energy sector also has an awful lot to do with environmental protection. A $1.5 billion investment in the Ocean Protection Plan. I'm hopeful that I'll have a chance to detail that plan.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, Conservatives have been asking for a plan on how to get this pipeline built for months, and they have done nothing. Now, it's not just out-of-work people in Alberta or Saskatchewan that are suffering from this government's actions. It is people all across this country. There are seniors whose pension plans are being affected as more and more money leaves Canada's energy sector. But instead of building a Canadian energy brand that the Prime Minister can promote around the world, he's actually in Europe talking to elites, talking down our resources. Yeah. Why doesn't the Prime Minister champion Canada's energy sector and stand up for the men and women that work in it?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
In Fort McMurray just a matter of days ago when he did exactly that. When he spent time with energy workers, he spent time with CEOs of major energy companies, and he couldn't have been clearer in his message that Canada understands the importance of natural resources, not only in the energy sector, but forestry and mining. And all of the policies of this government, Mr. Speaker, seek to enhance the contribution of the energy sector, not only in Canada, but around the world.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The truth is the exact opposite. The Prime Minister was in Europe bragging about all that he's doing to punish Canada's energy sector. What he actually said, Mr. Speaker, what he actually told his friends in Europe is that he was disappointed that he couldn't phase out the energy sector tomorrow. So, can the Minister tell the House, if the Prime Minister is disappointed that he can't phase out the energy sector tomorrow, by what date will this Liberal government finally phase it out?
Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, it's too bad that the Leader of the Opposition showed no patience last Sunday. And he decided that he was going to speak to Canadians before the Premier of Alberta, before the Prime Minister of Canada, because he has extraordinary powers beyond the rest of us. He knew exactly what the Prime Minister was going to say because he had already written his message before the Prime Minister spoke. What did the Prime Minister say? That this government supports the Trans Mountain expansion while it invests historic amounts of money in the West Coast that all Canadians find so...
Order. I'm having trouble picking out a particular member heckling on this side because there are so many. I'd ask members to restrain themselves and listen to both the question and the answer.
The Honourable Member for Richmond North Athabasca. Mr. Speaker, I'd like the Prime Minister to give me his definition of leadership, because on Trans Mountain, he hasn't shown any. It took 1 month to get 2 premiers to meet. And this is a subject of national interest. In the end, all we found out was that the pipeline would probably be built. Why does the Prime Minister always wait until the last minute to get involved in natural resources files, as well as private investments, jobs, and Canadian families?
Honourable Minister of Transport.
Honourable Minister of Transport. Mr. Speaker, our Prime Minister has shown more leadership in the last 2 years than the Conservatives under Harper showed for 10 long years. We recognize that the Trans Mountain Expansion project is in the national interest. This pipeline will be built. It is important not only for Alberta, but for Canada as a whole, and we understand that, and we're going to move forward. Honourable Member for Richmond-Athabasca. Mr. Speaker, these are the facts. The Premier of Alberta said that delaying this project costs $40 million a day, and now we're learning that the Prime Minister wants to invest public money to reassure investors. So if I've understood correctly, the Prime Minister's inability to make a decision is actually costing Canadian taxpayers. So my question is simple. How much does the Prime Minister plan to invest from taxpayer money to manage his own incompetence on this file? The Honourable Minister of Transport. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're not like the Harper Conservatives. We know that we can move forward, help the economy, and take care of the environment at the same time. That's always been our position, and it will continue to be our position. We work with all of our partners to move forward on this project. Why? Because it is in the national interest. The Honourable Member for Rimouski-Nejet-Témiscouata-les-Basques.
Mr. Speaker, here this afternoon, the Standing Committee on Health will table its report that will highlight the need to implement universal pharmacare. The study, instigated by my colleague from Vancouver Kingsway, has made it possible for committee members to hear testimony from 99 witnesses. It was a comprehensive 2-year study, and the outcome of all this work is crystal clear. To quote our leader, Jagmeet Singh, people need a champion for better public health care. It's not enough to defend it, we need to expand it. Mr. Speaker, why is the government refusing to commit to implementing universal pharmacare now?
The Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Canadians are proud of their publicly funded universal Medicare system, one that's based on their need and not on their availability to pay. Yet, there's certainly room for improvement. We recognize we've created an advisory council on the implementation of a national pharmacare program with its mandate to study and evaluate and to present to us with options that we will be considering. I look forward to the report that will be coming up, and I also want to take this opportunity to thank the Health Committee members for the wonderful work that they've done.
The Honourable Member for Rimouski-Nejet-Témiscouata-les-Basques. Mr. Speaker, 1 out of 5 people in Canada can't afford to pay for their prescription drugs. There have been studies, federal commissions, and reports that have concluded for decades that a universal pharmacare program would help millions of people and save $4.2 billion in drug costs. People want a universal pharmacare program now, not another study. Despite 2 years of work that have culminated today in a new parliamentary study, the government thinks that we still need another study. Why?
Ministre de la Santé.
Honourable Minister of Health. Mr. Speaker, Canadians are proud of our healthcare system. The system is funded with public funds and is based on people's needs rather than their ability to pay. Of course, it can always be improved. We created an advisory committee about implementing a national pharmacare program. This committee has the mandate of studying, evaluating, and presenting recommendations. I'd also like to thank the Health Committee for their excellent work. I'm looking forward to reading their report.
Member for Timmins, James Bay.
Reconciliation is not a hashtag. It's not a bumper sticker on a Liberal car. It is about recognizing the Section 35 constitutional rights of Indigenous people in this country. And yet yesterday, when my colleague from Abitibi Bay, James Nunvik, EU, asked about the failure of this government to consult Indigenous people about their Section 35 rights on Kinder Morgan, the government didn't even bother to respond. So I'd like to ask them on the record, do they believe that in the case of Kinder Morgan, the Section 35 rights of Indigenous people in Canada must be respected?
Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
The government responded to the Federal Court of Appeal decision in the Northern Gateway case that said there was insufficient consultation by the Harper government. It made absolutely no sense for us to use the same process. So we added 4 months more of consultation with Indigenous communities up and down the line. We established a co-developed monitoring committee with Indigenous communities, the first time in Canadian history. Many, many Indigenous peoples have been involved and will benefit as we share prosperity in our energy sector.
Honourable Member for Timmins, James Bay.
Okay, here's the facts, my friend. Reconciliation and UNDRIP is going to be made real on the ground by the Indigenous people of this country. And yet, in the middle of what the Texas ultimatum from the oil company to demand action, they met with everybody but the Indigenous people in this country. So I'd like to ask my friend, does he think they're just going to walk past Indigenous Canada to build this Liberal pipeline? Is that what he's telling the people of Canada?
Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, we met with 118 Indigenous communities. 43 have signed benefit agreements, 33 of them in the province of British Columbia. And as the member knows, there is not unanimity on this file, not within political parties and not within communities. Ultimately, a decision has to be taken by one government in Canada's interests. We have made that decision, and the arguments, I'm sure, are very well known to many Canadians.
Honourable Member for Milton.
Mr. Speaker, there is a crisis that's been created by this government, and it's following on the uncertainty of the Trans Mountain project. Now, let's take a look at what it's done to foreign investments. Since 2015, investments have decreased $80 billion. In 2016 and 2017, they decreased a further 42% and 27%. And now the Prime Minister is traveling internationally, ostensibly in order to sell Canada to foreign investors. And what does he say? He says he laments that he can't phase out the oil and gas sector tomorrow. Wow. Mr. Speaker, here's my question. Is this how they think they sell investor confidence?
Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member knows that we have consistently stated in this House from the very first days that we were elected that we were committed to the responsible movement of our natural resources to global markets, something that the Harper government couldn't do in 10 years. Not 1 kilometre built to give us access to global markets. We also understand at the same time that we pay attention to environmental stewardship with a $1.5 billion investment in the Ocean Protection Plan.
Honourable Member for Milton.
I thought it would never end, Mr. Speaker. Let's review the actual record of this government when it comes to their inability to get things done. $36 billion investment in the Pacific Northwest LNG project, cancelled. $7.9 billion Northway Gateway project, cancelled. The $50 billion Energy East and Eastern Mainland projects, both cancelled. And again, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister of Canada ends up going to Europe to try and sell investor confidence by saying that his plan is to phase out the oil and gas industry. Can anyone over there answer for me?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, expanded export capacity for the Alberta Clipper project, the Nova Gas pipeline, the Line 3 replacement project, the Trans Mountain expansion pipeline, support for the Keystone XL pipeline, the Arno Apatite mine, Woodfire LNG, the Ridley Island propane terminal, tens of thousands of jobs, billions of dollars of investment in the Canadian economy.
The Honourable Member for Red Deer Lacombe.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday I heard again from oil and gas sector workers and their families, and they're still scared. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister was in France, lamenting the fact that he couldn't phase out the Canadian energy sector fast enough. The Prime Minister's attack on the energy sector has driven billions of dollars out of Canada and into the hands of foreign competitors, almost $90 billion in the last 2 years alone. So, Mr. Speaker, why does this Prime Minister say one thing when he's in Fort McMurray and the exact opposite when he's in Paris?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister makes the same speech in Nanaimo, in Vancouver, in Fort McMurray, in Calgary, in Edmonton, in Winnipeg, in St. John's, Newfoundland, because he is delivering a message to all Canadians. And that message is that in 2018, environmental stewardship and the economy is one conversation. I'm very anxious to hear members of the Conservative Party talk about the importance of the $1.5 billion investment in the Ocean Protection Plan.
Honourable member for Foothills.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Minister of Natural Resources asked why we aren't sharing his optimism. Is he serious? $86 billion in investment gone. Northern Gateway, Energy East, Pacific Northwest, cancelled. Trans Mountain is on its last legs, and a job-killing carbon tax. And again, the Prime Minister unveils his true vision for Canada's energy sector, phasing it out. On behalf of the hundreds of thousands of unemployed energy workers across Canada and their families, does the Minister truly believe that phasing out Alberta's energy sector is reason for optimism, or is he just delusional?
Honourable Minister of Natural Resources. Order.
I didn't know that the member opposite had other powers, that he could do some kind of psychoanalysis across these 100 meters, but Canadians will understand. We'll say it as many times as the members opposite want to pose the question, that the government is committed to the energy sector, and I've just given tens of thousands of reasons why. We understand that the workers in Alberta, the workers in British Columbia are seeing that things are getting better. Thousands of jobs have been created over the last number of months, and we're confident through the entrepreneurship and the innovation genius of the people of Alberta that
Order. The honourable member for Caribou, Prince George, I know will want to wait his turn to speak until he's called upon to do so. The honourable member for Lakeland.
Mr. Speaker, things are actually only going to get worse. The Prime Minister said Canada must phase out the oil sands. He killed Northern Gateway, killed Energy East, killed the Pacific Northwest LNG project, imposed a tanker ban, imposed an offshore drilling ban, and is piling up costs and red tape. Investment in capital is leaving Canada at historic levels. Yesterday in Calgary, we met with energy investors and workers. They want market access, certainty, and a champion. Instead, the Prime Minister was in France, undermining Canadian oil and gas, saying he can't phase it out fast enough. He's failing and dividing Canadians. Why on earth won't he put our own country first?
Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
the government of Canada is offering an expansion of export markets and a more certain process, just what the member opposite has asked for. And it's also a little hard to understand why it is that members of the Conservative Party, many of them from Alberta, don't have confidence in the capacity to innovate, the entrepreneurship of Albertans. It was the very innovation of entrepreneurs in Alberta that unlocked the key to these vast resources. We have confidence in the entrepreneurship of Alberta. It's very surprising that members opposite do not.
It seems some members did not hear me. I'd ask the member for Grand Prairie Mackenzie and others to wait their turn to speak. The honourable member for Lakeland.
Mr. Speaker, these Liberals are killing Canadian innovation and killing Canadian jobs. Canadian energy creates jobs across the whole country, provides billions for social services, healthcare, schools, charities, and pension plans, but hundreds of thousands of energy workers have lost their jobs, families are struggling, substance abuse and suicide is up, and these Liberals here are laughing about it today. Global oil demand will increase long into the future, but the Prime Minister won't let Canada compete. Canada's oil and gas is the most environmentally and socially responsible in the world. We on this side know it, they have no clue. When will the Prime Minister quit attacking Canadian energy and show Canada?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
I'm sure that the member opposite, who comes from Alberta, would know that Alberta has created 50,000 new jobs in 2017. I'm sure she also knows that Alberta will lead Canada in growth in 2018. Why wouldn't she celebrate that? Well, I understand that the past 10 years of the Harper government was no reason to celebrate, but the future of Alberta...
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, a Canadian, Abu Sufyan Abdelrazak, was imprisoned for near 6 years in Sudan. He was held in solitary confinement, illegally detained, and even tortured. Worse, Canadian intelligence officers allegedly cooperated with Sudanese authorities during his detention and hindered the work of Canadian diplomats. What will the minister do to ensure that CSIS is never again involved, either directly or indirectly, in torturing a Canadian citizen?
The Minister of Public Safety.
The honourable gentleman will know that I am prohibited from commenting on outstanding court proceedings, but I would point out in response to his questions about transparency and accountability with respect to our security agencies that we have issued new ministerial directives. We have caused those ministerial directives to be published for the first time ever. We are in the process of working on Bill C-59, Mr. Speaker, which implements a whole series of transparency and accountability measures, and we have created the first ever National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians.
Honourable Member for Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, this Canadian has already suffered unconscionable abuse and torture at the hands of Sudanese authorities. And the Government of Canada not only abandoned him, but also was found by the federal court to have been complicit in his detention. But rather than work towards justice and accountability, Mr. Speaker, this government's just walked away from settlement negotiations with Mr. Abdelrazak, giving no reasons. So let me echo the call from Amnesty International. Will the Prime Minister instruct his officials to recommit to mediation and to apologize for Canada's role in his horrific ordeal?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Again, Mr. Speaker, the honourable gentleman is a distinguished lawyer and knows very well that I cannot comment on the items that are included in his question. But I can tell him that the issue of transparency and accountability is taken very seriously by this government. We have implemented measures in Bill C-59, in Bill C-22, and we have published the first ever ministerial directives with respect to the issue of torture in dealing with international entities. And I'm pleased to say that he is one of the members of Parliament that in fact serves on the National Security and Intelligence.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, Quebec has had enough of the Prime Minister's offhand attitude concerning illegal immigration in Saint-Bernard-de-l'École. Quebec won't foot the bill for the Prime Minister's lack of leadership. Quebec will be claiming a reimbursement of $146 million and will be capping future quotas for housing new arrivals. Why is the Prime Minister abusing the generosity of Quebecers? Honourable Minister of Immigration. Canada is an open and welcoming country for people who need protection. However, our government is determined to ensure that there is ordered immigration.
$173 million for border security operations, as well as faster processing of asylum claims. We have the 9th meeting of the Intergovernmental Task Force on Irregular Migration tonight. I look forward to engaging with my counterpart from Quebec to continue the good collaboration that we have with Quebec on irregular migration.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, can you imagine the chaos that there will be at the border there? There will be 300 to 400 illegal crossings per day this summer. The government of Quebec can't take it anymore. It's calling on the Prime Minister to take concrete measures. When will the Prime Minister finally take this seriously? The Honourable Minister of Immigration.
Border operations seriously, the Conservative Party. They cut $390 million from the the CBSA. You know who didn't take asylum claims seriously? The Conservative Party. They cut funding from the IRB, which is why we inherited massive backlogs in the IRB. We're doing the right thing. We're reinvesting in CBSA. We're reinvesting in the IRB to make claims faster. We're working with provinces. We're not alienating provinces like they did in 10 years of power.
Shameful. The honourable member for Calgary-Nose Hill.
I'm sure that'll fly really well in Quebec today. Government officials project that there could be 400 people who illegally enter from the United States per day this summer just at the Quebec border alone. They will claim asylum, won't have their claims heard for years, all the while benefiting from government social programs. Canadians expect a fair immigration system. What is happening now is completely unfair, both to Canadian taxpayers and to those seeking to enter Canada while playing by the rules.
Exactly.
Can the minister stop the excuses and just tell how he's going to end this crisis?
Well said. Minister of Immigration.
Speaker, we have invested $173 million to improve the processing of asylum claims in this country. When the time came to vote for that $173 million, the member opposite joined our party and voted against that measure. When the time came to invest in resettling survivors of Daesh, vulnerable women, the most vulnerable refugees in this world, the party opposite voted against that measure. When the time came to invest in CBSA, the party opposite voted against that measure. We will take no lessons from the Conservatives on this issue.
The honourable member for Calgary-Nose Hill.
Well, Mr. Speaker, spending tax dollars is not a metric in and of itself.
Here, here.
Quebec is demanding millions of dollars to fund the housing, health care, and education of illegal migrants, and Quebec has called the Liberals' response unacceptable. It is not compassionate to tweet #WelcomeToCanada and turn Canada's asylum system into a joke. His ego and his failure has put Canada's social programs and once sound immigration system in jeopardy. Will the Prime Minister designate the entire Canadian border as a technical official point of entry for the purpose of applying the Safe Third Country Agreement?
Honourable Minister of Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, this is the party that cut refugee health care, the people who are most vulnerable in our society. A measure that the Federal Court of Canada called cruel and unusual punishment, Mr. Speaker. We will take no lessons on refugee response. We are working very closely with Quebec. We've issued over 12,000 work permits to Quebec asylum seekers so that we minimize the pressure on provincial services. We have provided an additional $112 million for the settlement and integration of newcomers in Quebec. We will continue to work closely with Quebec, and I look forward to the meeting tonight.
The honourable member for Jonquière. Mr. Speaker, many sectors in Quebec are very concerned about the NAFTA negotiations. There is no guarantee that our aluminum industry will be protected against American tariffs and that the Liberals will keep their promise to protect supply management. It is time that the government reassured all producers and all workers. Will the Liberals reassure our sectors and promise that there will be no concessions on supply management and no punitive tariffs on the aluminum industry?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
Speaker, I appreciate my colleague's question, and I can understand their concern when the only policy idea we heard from the official opposition, the Conservative Party, is how to dismantle supply management. But I can assure her that we're the party that fought to implement supply management, and we are the party that will defend it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Essex.
Canada is holding its breath as Donald Trump threatens to remove steel and aluminum tariff exemptions on May 1st unless NAFTA is signed to his liking. The minister is headed to Washington with only 6 out of 30 chapters negotiated and the idea of an agreement in principle being floated. What exactly is an agreement in principle, and what will we be giving up to achieve it? Will it be brought before this House to be debated and voted on, or will Canadians be bound for another 25 years with a NAFTA that puts profits before protection of our environment, our sovereignty, and working people?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for Canada-U.S. Relations.
Speaker, we've worked with U.S. counterparts for months now to ensure that at every level our position is fully understood and that Canada is exempt from these tariffs. The Prime Minister has raised this question directly with the President, as has the Minister, with her opposite numbers, as have I, and as have a variety of Liberal members of this House when they're doing their good work down in Washington, a variety of visits. We will continue to advocate for a full exemption, and I can assure the member opposite that we will always stand up for Canadian workers and Canadian values. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Hull-Aylmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When firefighters, police officers, and paramedics put their safety on the line, they are acting in service to all Canadians. When their work leads to the ultimate sacrifice, their families deserve our support in return.
Public safety tell us how the government is upholding the commitment that we made to Canadians to support the families of fallen public security officers.
Mr.
Speaker, we promised to create a non-taxable compensation benefit of $300,000 for the families of police officers, firefighters, and paramedics who die in the line of duty. As of this month, the Memorial Grant program is now in effect. First responders put themselves at risk every day to keep our communities safe. From now on, they can go to work secure in the knowledge that if tragedy strikes, this federal program will be there to help support their families.
The honourable member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, the Liberal Party in its electoral platform said we will go even further in terms of financial transparency. But what's the reality? Well, they're just becoming more secretive. Now the president of the Treasury Board is proposing to give himself $7 billion, but he doesn't quite know what he's going to do with it. He wants us to vote for it, but he does want that $7 billion, and he expects us all to trust him. Well, these people don't seem to know how to spend and how to count, so why should we trust him, the Honourable President of the Treasury Board? Mr. Speaker, we are proud of the changes that we have made to improve transparency and to deliver results to Canadians. We now have a new vote in the Budget Implementation Act, and that includes a detailed table in Budget 2018, and it gives details on the budgetary votes and measures. These kinds of changes will give concrete results for all Canadians. The honourable member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, let's be clear. I'd like to congratulate the President of the Treasury Board for his efforts in French. However, we need to see what they've actually done. They said originally that there would be no deficit and that it increased. They said they would balance the budget. There's no balanced budget. And now they want us to trust them on $7 billion? No, Mr. Speaker. Why is the government being so secretive? The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
We'll take no lessons from the Conservatives on budget transparency. The fact is, it was the Conservative government that took millions of dollars from the infrastructure fund for borders, the border infrastructure fund, to use to pay for fake lakes and gazebos hundreds of kilometers away from the border. We have ensured that our funding is strictly tied to the list of initiatives described in a detailed table in our budget. We are proud of this major step towards fiscal accountability. We will continue to ensure that we do the...
The honourable member for Carleton.
Says the President of the Treasury Board, who is the greatest defender of the sponsorship scandal anywhere in Canada. That's you. Now he expects us to believe that the novel he held up, that he calls his budget book, has any legal weight in restricting on what the government spends this $7 billion no-strings-attached Liberal slush fund. What crisis justifies giving these Liberal ministers the power to spend that money with no restrictions right in an election year?
Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, again, that honourable member was part of the cabinet where the President of the Treasury Board, in fact, the member for Parry Sound Muskoka, actually took funds from a border infrastructure fund to put gazebos in his riding. Beyond that, Mr. Speaker, earlier I actually raised from the budget verbiage, but if the honourable member would look at the main estimates, he would find that the inclusion of the $7 million budget implementation vote for measures approved and identified in Table A211 of Budget 2018. Every detail is in there, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Order. Order. The Honourable Member for Carleton.
What is not in there is legal enforceability. The legislation does not clearly restrict the power of this group of liberal politicians on the Treasury Board to move that $7 billion between and among priorities that have not been approved by Parliament. Governments can only spend what Parliament has approved, and only on the specific purposes approved, except this slush fund will allow them to move the money wherever they want. How is that accountable to taxpayers?
The President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, just about everything the honourable member just said is wrong. The fact is that he can go to Table A211 and he will see line-by-line items, detailed descriptions of these funds and where they will be invested for Canadians. And let's be very clear, Mr. Speaker, we will continue to invest for Canadians because that's what's created 600,000 new jobs for Canadians in the last 2 years. That is what has created the best growth in the G7. We're going to keep on investing in Canadians and being transparent with Parliament as we do it.
Honourable Member for Fort Moody Coquitlam.
You know, Liberals go on and on about Kinder Morgan being in the national interest. Mr. Speaker, you know what's in the national interest? Protecting our coastal economy. You know what else is in the national interest? Protecting our marine environment. The proposed Kinder Morgan pipeline will mean a 7-fold increase in tanker traffic. These tankers will be filled with diluted bitumen. You know what's not in the Liberals' so-called ocean protection plan? Technology to clean up toxic dilbit. When will the Prime Minister put an end to this charade and protect our coast?
Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
That 7-fold increase is from 5 to 35 a month, so 1 tanker a day. The $1.5 billion Ocean Protection Plan strengthens the eyes and the ears of the Coast Guard to ensure better communication with vessels. It adds new radar sites in strategic locations, puts more enforcement officers on the coast, adds more primary environmental response teams to bolster Coast Guard capacity. It invests in new technology. We're conducting scientific research to make cleanups more effective, and we reopened the Kitsilano Coast Guard station that was shut.
The Honourable Member for Skinna-Bulkley Valley.
You know, when it comes to the Kinder Morgan crisis, this Prime Minister is actually uniting the country, but not the way he thinks, because whether you're an oil worker in Alberta or an environmentalist in British Columbia, everyone can now agree that he screwed this thing up right from the very beginning. Now, there's been no meaningful consultation with First Nations, no credible environmental review, and no oil spill cleanup plan from the British Parliament to British Columbia. Folks want to know, when are Liberals going to finally keep their promise to people and the planet?
Yeah.
Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Speaker, in addition to the Ocean Protection Plan, there will be additional funding to Western Canada Marine Response, which will provide marine safety, played a critical role in our decision, and this project is facilitating an investment of $150 million to establish 6 new response bases in British Columbia, 135 new personnel, 43 new vessels, including spill response craft and barges. All new personnel, facilities, and equipment will be in place several months before any increase in traffic associated with the expansion.
Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, the member for Mississauga, Erin Mills, excuses her words at an event featuring a notorious apologist for the war crimes of Syrian President Assad, an event hosted by Palestine House, long associated with anti-Israeli extremism and terror, by saying she was only meeting with a diverse array of individuals. Mr. Speaker, diversity does not excuse pandering to extremist organizations in the Prime Minister's name. Again,
will the PM renounce this unacceptable solicitation of votes?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, we've been abundantly clear that we oppose and condemn the murderous Assad regime and its indiscriminate violence perpetrated against its own civilians, including the use of chemical weapons. Equally, we've said many times that we are a friend of Israel and friend of the Palestinian people, and that Canada is committed to the goal of a comprehensive, just, and lasting peace in the Middle East, including the creation of a Palestinian state living side by side in peace with Israel. And I know that these are positions that my colleague, the member on this side of the floor, shares as well.
The honourable member for Thornhill.
Well, Mr. Speaker, this is not the first example of this government looking the other way when Liberal MPs seek electoral support and funding from groups associated with extremism and terror. Government funding of Palestine House was cut by our previous Conservative government 6 years ago for just these reasons. So again, Mr. Speaker, will the PM distance himself from this outrageous tribute made in his name?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, I just stated clearly the position of this government, and it's been the position for a long time, clear condemnation of the indiscriminate violence perpetrated by the murderous Assad regime, and that we are friends of Israel and remain friends of the Palestinian people. The member, too, has publicly condemned the recent attacks perpetrated by the Assad regime, and she has worked hard on these issues as a member of the Committee on International Human Rights. Equally, she has done tireless work tackling issues of discrimination in all forms, including anti-Semitism. We applaud the work that she's done on this side of the floor. They're positions that this government believes in.
The member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday, first-degree murder charges against notorious gang leader Nick Chan were thrown out of court due to delay. The Minister of Justice claims that she is appointing judges, but after a year and a half, only 1 out of 10 new judicial spots created to stem the backlog in Alberta's courts have been filled. This is worse than inaction. This is negligence. Will the Minister take responsibility for the release of this dangerous criminal?
Honourable Minister of Justice.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our government takes responsibility with moving forward with criminal justice reform that keeps communities safe, protects victims, and holds offenders to account. By way of introducing Bill C-75, we've introduced and fulfilled a commitment to bring forward substantive reform to the criminal justice system that will fundamentally address delays if passed. Further to that, I take my responsibilities in appointing Superior Court justices incredibly seriously. 167 have been appointed, 27 appointed in Alberta. We'll continue to appoint judges to ensure that all vacancies are filled.
The honourable member for Sudbury.
25 remote First Nations communities depend on diesel as its sole source of electricity. This source is neither viable nor reliable, and it is also extremely expensive. Recently, the Honourable Minister of Indigenous Services announced an historic partnership that would not only allow for reliable and clean power generation, but contribute to economic development and infrastructure opportunities in First Nations communities. Can the Honourable Minister please share with this House the benefits of this project?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the honourable member for Sudbury for his question.
To make an announcement of a $1.6 billion investment in the First Nations-led Wate Power that will bring hydroelectricity power from the Ontario grid to 16 First Nations.
This is the most significant power project managed by Aboriginal people in the history of this province.
This GHG emissions the equivalent of taking 35,000 cars off the road and will create close to 800 new jobs.
The Honourable member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Mr. Speaker, China is becoming more and more aggressive, building military installations throughout the South China Sea and today holding live fire drills in the Taiwanese Strait. Canada's government has thus far declined to condemn Chinese aggression in the South China Sea and has never stood up for Taiwan. This Prime Minister can promote peace and stability in the Asia-Pacific by condemning clear acts of aggression. So will he?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, for our government, the promotion and protection of human rights in all our engagements, including those with China, remain primordial and they remain a priority. We raise human rights situations and actions in all opportunities to engage with our Chinese counterparts, including at the highest levels. We continue to encourage China to live up to its international commitments, and we do that through ongoing and frank dialogue. As we work towards a more stable relationship with China, we will never hesitate to raise concerns, whether they be human rights in nature or for China to live up to its humanitarian and human rights obligations.
Honourable member for Salaberry-sur-Roi. Mr. Speaker, the tender process for the dismantling of the Catherine Spirit stipulated that the proponent had to have an emergency intervention plan in place 30 days before work began. Yet when firefighters, the 75 firefighters, were beating back flames on the wreck, they did so with no emergency plan because the only thing that Groupe Saint-Pierre provided was a plan of the boat. That doesn't really help with the fire. In fact, the Beauharnois fire chief told me that if this didn't change, his men will no longer intervene. This is very worrisome. Will the government stop trivializing this and finally launch an investigation? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, the need is not to investigate, it's to remove the Catherine Spirit, and that's exactly what our government is doing. We acknowledge that there are risks on wrecks for coastal communities and the marine environment. And as my colleague knows, a fire started in the engine room of the Catherine Spirit when dismantling work was ongoing. Nobody was harmed, and there has been no observed pollution. And that is what is important for us to know. It's very important to move quickly to get the Catherine Spirit out of there, and that's what we'll do.
For Northwest Territories.
Mr. Speaker, our government believes that a sustainably developed resource sector is essential to the success of the Canadian economy. Getting this right requires us to work with Indigenous people as equal partners through well-defined, predictable processes, like we do through co-management regimes across the North. Can the Parliamentary Secretary for Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs update this House on the steps taken to ensure co-management is at the forefront of discussions on Northern resource development?
Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank my colleague from the Northwest Territories for his tremendous leadership on northern issues in Canada. Canada's northern co-management approach to resource development is an example to the world and one we're proud of. Both territorial and Indigenous partners came together at the UN Permanent Forum on co-management in the North, because it has ensured that Indigenous people are equal partners in determining the best use of their lands and their resources, and together we will continue to develop a shared vision, one that is strong, prosperous, and sustainable.
Honourable member for Caribou, Prince George.
The Fisheries Minister laid out critical bid criteria for those interested in the lucrative surf clam quota, such as the successful applicant must be an Indigenous company in respect of which shares are owned by Indigenous persons or groups. However, we know that winning bid wasn't even incorporated until weeks after the announcement was made. And we know that a Liberal MP's brother and former Liberal MP are going to get very rich. So, Mr. Speaker, will the minister table the bid criteria scores so we can all see how his Liberal family and friends won a bid without a company, without a boat, and without Indigenous partners?
The Honourable Minister of Fisheries.
Speaker, I can give my honourable friend points for imagination, but we can't give him points for, in fact, sticking to the facts with what happened. Mr. Speaker, the fact that there's a new participant in this lucrative surf clam fishery should not surprise the Conservative Party. In fact, they began a process 3 years ago to do exactly that, include a new entrant. What they forgot to do was to include Indigenous communities. And we're very proud, Mr. Speaker, that the most impressive economic benefit to Indigenous communities, Atlantic Canadians, came from a group that included Indigenous partners in 5 provinces, 4 Atlantic provinces, and Quebec. We chose the best proposal, and we're proud of that.
The honourable member from Montcalm. Mr. Speaker, Quebec has always been a welcome haven. But since the Prime Minister extended his irresponsible invitation, Quebec has been experiencing a real crisis in migrants while Ottawa simply twiddles its thumbs. The Immigration Refugee Board is years behind in processing cases, and the Minister of Immigration has the nerve to come and preach to Quebec. But that's irresponsible and it's unacceptable. Will he finally make up his mind today and reimburse Quebec for the costs incurred because of his own negligence? The Honourable Minister of Immigration. Canada is an open and welcoming country for those who need protection. However, our government is determined to ensure that there is orderly immigration.
Closely with Quebec on the irregular migration issue. We have worked very closely with Quebec in the Intergovernmental Task Force on Irregular Migration. We have our 9th meeting tonight, in which we will discuss issues of mutual concern. We have worked very closely with Quebec to make sure that there is extra funding for newcomers and integration in Quebec, an increase of over $112 million.
Hear, hear.
And that's all the time we have today for question period. Merci. Merci. We have a point of order for the honourable member for Timmins, James Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In a moment, along with my colleague from Abitibi Bay, James Nunavik Inu, we will be asking for unanimous consent on an important motion because it's up to the Parliament of Canada to accept our role and obligation in furthering the work of reconciliation and addressing the still harsh wounds from the forcible removement of Indigenous children to destroy Indigenous identity in the residential school systems. There has been extensive talks among all the parties, and I sincerely hope that you will find that there is unanimous consent in this Parliament for this motion. That the House call on the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops to A, invite Pope Francis to Canada to apologize on behalf of the Catholic Church to Indigenous people for the Church's role in the residential school system as outlined in Call to Action 58 of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report. B, to respect their moral obligation and the spirit of the 2006 Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement and